Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Episode in the Build My Brand series. I'm speaking with Debbie O'Connor, who is our resident branding expert, and the title for this interview is How to Evolve or Rebrand Your Business. This is a really important topic, and I'm guessing if you've gone through all of the other episodes, you might be having a look at your brand right now and realize it's definitely in need of some improvements. But the question you may be asking is, do I just need to do a couple of simple tweaks, or what we're going to call evolve your brand, or do I need to do a complete overhaul, which is what we're going to call a rebrand? So we're going to go through how to make this really important decision and how to manage all of the other decisions that happen as a result of you deciding which way to go. So right now I'm going to pass it back over to Debbie, and we're going to go through a whole bunch of great questions. Debbie, welcome back.
Thank you, Dale.
All right, so just quickly bring people up to speed. Tell us a bit about your experience as a branding expert, and I know that you've been involved now in hundreds of either brand evolutions or brand revolutions as well. So do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so as a designer and a brand strategist, this is something that I do every day. And we work with businesses either to develop new brands for them or to look at their brand that they have and see how we can improve on that. Now, in the series, we've gone through so many different aspects of branding. You know, we've looked at the brand personality, brand story, looked at the visual collateral, so logos, fonts, colors, taglines, imagery. We've looked at online presence, both on website and social media. So
and your brand experience as well.
And the brand experience. So we've really covered off on a huge amount. But crunch time comes as to, do I need to keep on with the brand that I have, or does my brand need some help? So is it critical that I get something done, or am I at the stage where I can just tweak a few things and it's going to then make some massive improvements to the brand?
All right, and this is really designed for people that already have an established business, maybe been operating for a few years, or maybe even a few decades perhaps as well. And you're now kind of looking back at everything and realizing it's time for a refresh, but the question is, how much do we refresh? So how do you know that it's time to improve your brand? And would you say it's something that's an ongoing process, and the answer should be always, but then making the decision to how far do you go? Yeah,
look, most people that come to me are at that stage where they're not proud of their brand anymore. They're not happy to hand over their business cards or send someone to their website. They just are not really feeling the love with their own brand. So if they don't feel it with their brand, it's very hard for somebody else to feel it for their brand. So there's a bit of a gut instinct that says, look, it could be better. My competitors seem so much further ahead of me. And so they're starting to question where their brand is positioned and whether their strategy is correct. And now it's possibly time to get something done. We have a quick test that we get a number of our clients to do. It only takes about 5 minutes. It's really quite easy. And so what we suggest is gather all your collateral together. So your business cards, your letterheads, any of your brochures that you might have, newspaper adverts, pretty much anything, flyers you've done, anything that you've got.
Social media posts,
yep.
Websites.
So that's the printed side. Then you look at your online side. So that's your social media, your websites, any business, other websites that you might appear on with advertising banners or anything like that. So have a look at all of them and then ask yourself if it looks like a family. Are the colors consistent? Is the logo consistent? Are the fonts consistent? What about the imagery? Do they all relate? Basically, everything needs to look like it belongs to a family. So it doesn't all have to look exactly the same, because that gets boring over time. You know, you can't have exactly the same flyer now as you had, 10 years ago. So you do need to keep changing your marketing. That needs to happen. But when you put it all together, it needs to look like it belongs to a family. And that's where if it's not looking like that, suddenly you realize, oh, well, we used blue there, but we used pink there, and then we used a different font here, or we used 5 different fonts in a single post, there's something wrong there. It shouldn't be happening.
And it's nothing really to be too ashamed of, because I'm sure most businesses, if they're really honest with themselves, and if they haven't gone through a process like this, they just have a mishmash of everything that's happened over years and years of having different people maybe come and go, and fonts being installed on this computer but not on this one, and someone's used this color and someone tried to match it with their eye and the blue was a different shade. So it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so
it is. It's really common, and you hit the nail on the head. When you have different people coming in and out of the business with different levels of experience, things do change. And unless the business owner is taking control of that each and every single time something's been done, which is really hard to do, that's where it can fall down.
And they probably haven't had a brand strategy document, they haven't done the inductions, they haven't done any training, so really they've just got the brand by default.
That's exactly right. And so by having the strategy that we've been talking about all the way through the series, that is where you can then have a lot more control as to what's being put out with your brand. But over time, this is what starts to happen, and things change, people move on, other people come in, files get lost, and so people make stuff up, and that is where the brand starts to dissipate and lose its authenticity and what it really stands for.
So we get all of our visual aspects and the touch points that we've spoken about before, and lay them all out on the table and go, do these look like a family? Do they look like they belong together? And then if the answer is yes, I suppose then that's great. But more often than not, the answer is going to be, oh, we've got a problem here. So then the next question becomes, what do we do about this problem?
Yeah.
Do we just do a few little tweaks and changes and try to fix this one and fix that one? Or do we actually do a whole rebrand of everything?
Yeah, and that's where we have 10 questions that we usually ask to determine whether or not a business is really ready for a whole rebrand, because a rebrand is a big project. You need to look at the strategy, and you usually come up with an entirely new strategy, new colors, new logos, new fonts, new way of talking even, at that level, and creating a whole strategy document with it. So it really doesn't just relate to a new logo, business cards, and website. It is so much more than that. It's every single time you're going to put an advert in the magazine or paper, flyers,
so it could take months of work, and oftentimes it could cost in the tens of thousands. It's not because the graphic design cost is that much. It's just because the time that it takes to reprint and redo every single document, it all adds up, right?
Yeah, and also over the years, it's amazing how businesses accumulate more and more collateral, because you're developing things, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But when it comes to a rebrand, it's looking at every single one of those elements and saying, right, we now need to attach this new brand to everything. So we don't take it lightly, and we want to make sure that you are doing it all for the right reasons. It's not just a case of, well, we don't like our logo anymore, because your logo is simply just a symbol for your brand.
Yeah.
And we've ascertained that right in the beginning. It is not your entire brand. It's just a visual symbol. So is the rest of the brand not in line with that? These are the type of things that we need to look at. So,
all right, let's get into it. 10 questions that we can ask ourselves, and we're either saying yes or no. And then if there is more than 5, is that right? We might be looking for a complete rebrand.
Yeah.
Less than 5, it could just be a brand evolution, a few tweaks, a few changes, a few improvements, but not necessarily changing everything.
Yeah, look, if it's over 5, you really do need to think about a full rebrand, because then there are too many changes, and some of them are deal breakers, which I'll go through as well.
Okay.
So number 1, the first most common one is that the business has grown and developed. It's the most common reason for people to wanting to rebrand.
We started off in our garage or on the kitchen table, and now we have an office and we have 20 staff. And
that's exactly right. And the whole business is completely different. Even some of their service offerings might be different from when they first started. I mean, with my business, I did a rebrand at 10 years, because what I started with in the beginning was really me working from home on my own. I wasn't really going to develop a business. After maternity leave, I was going to go and get a job. But as it worked out, I was quite good at running a business. And 10 years later, the business had evolved into something completely different from where it had started. And 10 years was a really nice time for me to go, right, I'm going to be able to celebrate. This is a new milestone. The business has grown and developed into something so much bigger. And now the whole brand needs to tell that story.
Okay, so if the business has grown and changed significantly, then that could be a reason to rebrand, but not the only reason.
Yeah,
so
that's
there
right.
is 9 others.
Absolutely.
So let's go through the rest.
Yeah, so the next one is if your look is outdated. So Old Spice is a really good example. They have totally done a complete flip on their strategy. Their logo is still the same. Their packaging isn't, they've changed that, but all their marketing, everything did a complete change. So even though their logo stayed the same, their strategy on Old Spice, which used to be, I think I remember as a kid, there was an advert and had a little girl and she said, my daddy smells like Old Spice. Well, they didn't want it just to be daddies, like old daddies who wear Old Spice.
Those daddies are now 70 and 80, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now they wanted these younger, quirkier men coming in, and so they reposition themselves. And so sometimes that can happen because you don't want that outdated look and feel. So the next one...
So this could be if you're buying a business perhaps, and that was a business that was started in the 70s, 80s or 90s, and then a lot's changed in the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll come to that. So one of the other ones is new ownership.
Got it.
So if it's a new ownership and they're wanting to put their own stamp on the brand, that is another reason why you might then have that.
Okay, so if you're taking notes, number 1 was about the it's grown and developed. The business has grown and developed. Number 2, the look is starting to get a bit outdated. So what's number 3?
Okay, so number 3, this is where the market has changed. All right, and this is stuff you have no control over. Now, I'll give a good example. This brand of chocolate.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.